Hello there everyone, Carol from the Crafty Emporium, and welcome to the first video relating to the envelope junk journal. This little journal is brilliant for those that are having a go at making journals for the very first time. Now then, I have to tell you, there's loads of videos out there that you can follow to make this journal. This is just my interpretation of it and some of the extra little bits and pieces and tips and what have you that I've learnt along the way as I've made these. And I've made a fair few, believe you me. Now then, this is going to run over a few days whilst I show you step by step how to go about making it. It's not going to be one really big long video. Plus the fact I know that sort of if you're trying to craft along with some of these videos, sometimes trying to keep up with them and then pausing it becomes a bit of a pain in the bum. So, as I say, I'm going to do this over a few days, just to give you all the sort of ins and outs and tips and bits and pieces, as I've said. Now then, the next thing that I need to tell you is that next Saturday I'm going to show you a different type of junk journal that you can make, junk journal stroke mini album, that you can also make with envelopes. So I'm just going to put this to one side for now because I just want to quickly go through some of the materials with you. Now then, I did mention that you need greetings cards and envelopes. Now, the greetings cards can be blank, or they can be cards that are from birthdays or Christmases that you've received that you maybe want to use within your journal. The envelopes, they need to be your bog standard triangular flap envelope. They work best. Now, the colour that you use and the size that you use is entirely up to you. As I showed in the previous video, you can use the much larger envelopes if you have them. You can even have a go at making your own envelopes if you so wish, and utilise those. It's up to you, but you do need to put a little bit of thought into the size of the envelope that you're going to use. You've then obviously got to cover it and stuff, so then you've got to think about your decorative papers. Okay, now then, the size that I'm using is 5" by 7". 5 by 7, okay. And these were packs that I got at my local hobbycraft store. So those are the ones that I'm going to be using because it makes a nice, neat little compact journal. And you will need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of those, and 1, 2, 3 of those. Okay, so that's your envelopes and your cards that you're going to need. You're also going to need papers that you can use to actually cover each of your envelopes and cards. Now, I'm using part of a digital kit from Artie Mays. This one is Iris Flowers. That's what this one's from. But I am going to be using part of my own digital kit that I created called Roses and Daisies, which is based from a vintage photo album that I own. But I'm going to use these as my initial background, and then I'm going to tart and titivate to my heart's content on top of those pages. Now, I've printed it onto a thin card. Okay, it's basically, it's a thick paper, but it's classed as card. It needs to be sort of fairly substantial because we need to give some weight to the envelopes, because sometimes envelopes can be quite flimsy. And we need to give them a little bit of extra body. So these papers sort of help to give the envelopes that extra little bit of oomph. All right, so it makes them a little bit more durable. The other thing that you're going to need is a piece of card. Now, in the UK, we have A4 card, and this card works nicely with this size envelope. Now then, as you can see, it's a little bit too big. We will need to trim it down. If you are using a much larger envelope, you can see that this card is now too small for this envelope. Okay, so this is where again you need to just have a think about the sizes of envelopes that you're going to use and the card and stuff that you're going to use. Okay, I can trim this down, that's easy enough to do, and the card can match the colour of your envelopes. It doesn't matter if it's a different colour envelope. Okay, but we don't need those just yet, so they can go over there. Okay, the other materials that I've got are, I've got my Tim Holtz Distressing. Now this one, you can't tell what colour it is, can you? It's, you can't tell from that side much either. This one's Walnut Stain. Use whatever colour you want. But that's the one that I like to use because I like them really dark and vintagey. A little bit grungy-fied. I've got some PVA glue. It's just normal white PVA glue, it's nothing fancy, and again I get this from Hobbycraft, it's their tacky glue. Obviously in America you have different types of glues, use whatever it is that you've got, but this is the one that I'm going to use for making up the journal itself. I'm going to use a different glue for attaching the pages to the envelopes, and that glue is Collal glue. Let me just get my bottle and I'll show you. There we go. So I'm going to be using my Collal glue for attaching the pages to the envelopes. The simple reason is that I find that with white PVA glue, when you actually attach it, when you actually put the glue on the card or the envelopes, it can leave a slight ridge. Unless you actually paint it on or flatten it out with the scraper, and I find that the Collal glue, because it's so liquid, actually leaves a flatter surface for the paper to adhere to the cards and envelopes. Now, the other thing that I get asked a lot is where I get these little bottles from, and I get them off eBay. They're called precision tip bottles. Okay, precision tip bottles, okay, because they've got this little metal nibby bit on the end, because sometimes you don't want a great big dollop of glue, you want something quite fine. All right, so I decant my tacky glue into these little bottles, and that's what I use. Now the other couple of things that I've got, they're optional. All right, I like using micropore. I just hold that up there, micropore. Yeah, that's it, micropore. It's a little bit like a washi tape, but I like using it because it's better than washi tape because it actually works for a start off. But sometimes you need to just cover over maybe a bit of a seam or attach something, and you want it to sort of disappear into the background, and I find that the micropore tends to do that. So you might see me using this a lot. Now micropore is also used in hospitals and doctors, so if you've cut yourself and they put some bandages and stuff on, if you're allergic to plasters, they'll use the micropore instead. Okay, so that's what that is. The other thing that I've got, which I'm actually going to use on this one because of it being the same colour, is this sticky tape. Now I've lost the packaging for it so I can't tell you what it is or whose it is. It's a little bit like a brown packing tape, but it's not that brown papery one. Just show you. This is actually like a plastic. Alright, so like it rips like paper. It is like paper, but it's got a bit of a coating on this side. Now I know I will have got it from Hobbycraft. What it's called, who made it, I don't know. Now I've got to go up to Hobbycraft in a bit, so I'm going to see if I can find it, and if I can, I'll put the link in the I'll put it in the description box what it actually is. But I think that sometimes with envelopes, especially if they're a weak and feeble or feek and weeble kind of envelope, sometimes they just need that little bit of extra support on the parts where the creases are, and so that's why I tend to use these kind of things to just give those that little bit of extra support and to help them last that little bit longer. Okay, have I prattled on enough? Yes, I I think I have, yeah. Right, let's make a start. Me clean my decks a little. Now, as I say, you might go, oh, I've seen this version before, and that's fine. But as I say, I've just put my own little spin on it, and my own little hints and tips in the video as well. Okay, so the first envelope, we're going to open up just dead flat. Okay, just put a bit of bend on that crease so that it helps it to lay flat. So that one's going to stay like that. Okay, the next envelope, we're going to stick the flap to this area here, so it'll look like this envelope is now closed because we've got this flap on top of it. Okay, so again, I'm just going to bend that back a little, and I'm going to place glue, just a thin line of glue along the edge here. And I'm also going to place a little bit of a line of glue just down that edge. You don't want a great big globule of it. You want just thin lines. And we are not placing glue over the whole of the flap, because eventually we want to get into the side of the envelope here, and if that is stuck to this, then you can't actually get into the envelope to use it as a pocket. So I'm just going to line up this edge of the envelope here with the crease of the one underneath, and then I'm going to, no, don't move, stay, right. So now I'm going to flip that flap, flip the flap over, and I'm just going to glue that down there. So now this envelope should lift up and flap across. I can also at this point check to see if it's lined up, and I can see that that one isn't. So at this point, because I've got the liquid glue, I can actually maneuver my envelope a tad so that it's now lined up. Okay, so that's the second envelope dealt with. This is still the flap from the first one that we laid down. So the next envelope, again, I'm just going to bend that envelope flap over a little, and I'm going to place glue down this straight edge down here, just to the right hand side of the crease mark, and then I'm going to place glue around the edge like so. And then I'm going to place this flap on top of that part of the envelope there, and lining up the crease mark of the flap with the edge here, and also making sure that my envelope is lined up there too. Just apply a little bit of pressure, lift that up, apply a little bit of pressure there. There we go, number 3. Again, with envelope number 4, a little thin line all the way around that triangular flap, and then lay the envelope on top, flip it over, make sure it's all lined up. Same with the last one. Put a line down there around the triangular bit, lay it on top, flip it over, make sure it's nice and lined up here, and that it's lined up all the way around. Okay, You'll now see, if I lift it up, that we've now got a little bit of a collection where all these envelopes meet, and it means that they're stacked on top of each other. So we've now got a little bit of a lip from this very first envelope to the very last envelope. We've got a little bit of depth there. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to run my fingers down the side here and then fold over that top flap, and again apply that little bit of pressure, so that what I'm doing is I'm actually now, I don't know whether you can see that, but I formed a little bit of a, almost like a spine space there. So I'm just going to place glue on this last one around the triangle again, but down this side I'm going to try and cover the whole of that spine area, and just a line of glue just beyond that last crease, that new crease that I've made. So as you can see, look, I've got a wider amount of glue at this point, so it will now adhere to the back edge of all those envelopes and flop over to attach itself to the last one. Ta-da! We've got a little booklet. Okay, so that is if your glue sticks. Stick. Okay, now then, I'm going to use my paper trimmer for this one, but there's no reason why you can't just do this with scissors. Now, let me just fold that back over. So, the first envelope we're going to leave, and the last envelope we're going to leave, but the three in between, we are just going to trim like a mere fraction off the edge here, okay? And I mean like a mere fraction, to just open it up. Okay, so I'm talking that much. Now then, you don't have to do it with your paper trimmer. You can, if you've got a steady hand, just do it with a pair of scissors. That's number 2. And now number 3. Now, one of the things that I noticed when I cut that little strip off, if I turn that over, this is the second page, I noticed that here, if it's a really cheap envelope, this bit here isn't always stuck down. This one, see, oh no, you see, that little flappy bit there just wants sticking down, because it always got on my nerves. I know a song that'll get on your nerves, get on your nerves, get on your nerves. I know an envelope that'll get on your nerves. Sorry, for those that are new to watching me, you will get used to the madness. Okay, that one's not. See that one? Yes. Okay, just a little dab of glue there. Just makes it easier when you come into sticking on your papers. That little bit, just a little tiny bit. And there. There we go. Now at this point, this is where I would now put this envelope. Don't want to stick, look. It's because it knows it's on camera. It's seeking a bit of attention, you see. Right, you will stick down. Put my hand on it. Now it's at this point, which is where I would use this brown tape, and I'm just going to wrap it around this spine area here. Now you could just use a bit of paper, you could use a bit of card. just something to give it that little bit of extra support. But I just like to use this tape. So I'm just going to stick that on there, because also my papers do stick to this as well. You watch, when I do the next video, what's betting you it won't, the papers won't stick? Now I've said that they will. So infuriating, that. Okay. There we go. Now, you don't have to do this. This is just a little bit of extra that I like to do. It's your journal. You can do with it what you want. But it's just what I like to do, to just give it that little bit of extra support. And as I say, you could use your micropore if you wanted. Could use washi tape. But you need to stick that down, because that little blighter never sticks. Okay, next thing then is decorating the pages. So, as I say, these are the decorative papers that I'm using from the Arty Maze kit. Now, if I measure my envelopes, now remember, your envelopes are always made fractionally bigger than your cards. So, whilst the pack was a 5x7, this envelope should be fractionally bigger. So this envelope measures 5 1/8 width. And depth-wise, it measures just over 7 1/8. Now I want to cut my papers so that I'm going to end up with a very small border all the way around. So I'm actually going to cut my papers 5x7. And as if by magic, ta-da! Ta-da! There you go, I've got a couple already cut. And I'm going to cover each page the same. Now it's up to you if you want to use your decorative papers and do each page completely different. You can do. This is just what I'm going to do. It's your journal, as I keep saying, so do what it is that you want. You could even use your graphic 45 papers. But as I say, that is entirely up to you. Now, before I start gluing each of these pages down to the envelopes, I would actually ink up each of these edges. Now, I've talked a little bit about inking up in a previous video. I think it was on the 5 things challenge. Now, you can use your glass mats, you can use your thingy mats like I've got here. See, I know the technical terminology, thingy mats. Or you can just use a little simple piece of plastic. So I've got like a plastic wallet here. Now, a couple of ways in which you can do this. Ink up your dibby dabber, and then you just do very small circles, mainly on your plastic rather than on the card. And then I go across the corners diagonally a couple of times to give it that effect of that patina going around the corner. But can you see how much I'm actually putting onto the card? Well, you might not see that. Can you see how much is actually on the card and how much is on the plastic of my dabber? So that's one way of doing it. Now, this is actually quite time consuming, or it can be, to get the coloured effect that you want. The other way of doing it is just to lift it up and run your dabber so that it's at an angle, so it's half on the envelope, and just run it off and just run that along quickly. So you also would need to do that with each of your papers. You would need to ink them up, because paper has a core, and the core of this one is actually white. No, this one's cream, sorry. And so it would leave a line between the edge of the paper and the envelope, and it leaves, it's only tiny, but it's amazing how much it shows up, that line between the paper and the envelope. So if you ink it up, it just takes that away. Now again, you can do the little circular motion bit, or you can do the running off bit. That's entirely up to you. But I need you for the next video to have your envelopes ready. and all your papers cut to 5x7 or whatever size envelope you're using to then adhere onto your envelopes. So have them all linked up, have your envelopes linked up, and that'll do me for this one, and I'll see you on the other side. Have fun. See you in a bit.